UFC Edmonton, Brandon Moreno takes on Amir Albazi in what appears to be a flyweight title eliminator bout. This is the Funk and Flex MMA preview and prediction show. Guys, we were coming off of a 7-6 record last week. We went 8-3 the week before that, so a little bit of regression, but still nonetheless a winning record last week. In what was an absolutely banger of a card in UFC 308. We saw 7 of the 13 fights end in finishes at more than a 50% finish rate. With these new UFC gloves, that is about as good as we have seen to date, especially coming off of UFC Vegas 99, where there was only 2 finishes the whole card. So, unfortunately, guys, I do think that this one in UFC Edmonton is going to be more like Vegas 99. We are looking at a decent amount of decisions in my prediction. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and dive right into the card, guys. First, make sure you smash the like button, hit subscribe. I will have a betting video coming out later this week. I plan to have it dropped on Friday, and moving forward, they will be dropped every Friday. So make sure you turn on post notifications. I got a lot more other content coming to you guys soon. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first fight of the night. Starting off, we have a matchup between Jamie Lynn Horth and Ivana Petrovic. And for me, guys, I do think that this is going to be the start of what is a decision fest on this card. Unfortunately, I don't think that this is going to be the most exciting fight, and it's also a hard one to read. Both of these ladies are entering into their third fight in their UFC career, and they've slipped up when they face the tougher veteran competition. Jamie Lynn Horth falling to Veronica Hardy, and Ivana Petrovic falling to Luana Carolina. And not that that looks awful on either one of these fighters' records, but for me, it is just kind of hard to gauge how they're going to advance, especially after this fight. One thing that I will say about Ivana Petrovic is that I think that she is the one that would get the finish in this fight if either fighter did. And for that reason, I'm going to pick her for the pick this week. Ivana Petrovic has shown some very sneaky offensive grappling, especially on fighters that are going to shoot sloppy takedowns as the fight progresses. And I think that is going to be something that Jamie Lee Horth struggles with. She really just has not impressed me. Like I said, really both of these ladies are pretty average everywhere from the sample size that we've seen in the UFC. Yeah, they have a lot of finishes on the record, but that is fighting cans and lower tier organizations that realistically they're just not going to be getting that easy of matchups in the UFC. So I do think that this is going to be an interesting fight to see who progresses in the division. That being said, Ivana Petrovic is the pick this week. Anytime you have a close fight that is more than likely going to end in a split decision, I always like to be holding the dog on my ticket. And not that I'm telling you guys how to bet on the preview and prediction show, that's for Friday's video. But I will like to say that Ivana Petrovic should not be a plus 175 dog. So let's go ahead and take her on the money line, take her on decision, and maybe a sprinkle on submission. Off to the second fight of the night, we have a matchup between Chad Anheliger and Cody Gibson. And guys, this one, the pick for me is going to be Cody Gibson, starting out 0 for 2 in the Canadians in my predictions. Unfortunately for Chad Anheliger, we've just seen him struggle consistently with people that are decent at offensive grappling. And I say decent because of his 6 submission losses in his 20 fights, 5 of those submissions have come from lower tier organizations. And although he hasn't looked awful in the UFC, we still see him get wobbled too easily. We see him get in pad positions on the ground. And not because he's facing these insane grapplers, but it's because he gives himself up. He puts himself in bad positions, and that's just something that I see. For this one, guys, I know they're both scrappers and that this one is more than likely going to spend most of the time on the feet. I do see a good potential chance for Cody Gibson to lock up a submission on this one. Even though we've seen Cody Gibson struggle on his submission defense in past fights, this is his second run in the UFC. We have seen him get subbed 4 times, but in 31 fights, that's really not the most disappointing thing in the world. And especially in his second run in the UFC, dropping decisions to guys like Brad Katona really aren't the worst losses. His other loss, a decision to Miles Johns, I mean, you can't really beat the guy up for that. He is performing at a high level in my eyes, still at 37 years old, and with a nearly 7 inch reach advantage and 4 inches in height. I think Chad Anheliger is really going to struggle in this matchup. So for that reason, give me Cody Gibson. And guys, keep your eyes on that sub prop because I really like that angle for this fight. Moving along, we have a matchup between Sari City and Garrett Armfield here in the bantamweight division. And for this one, guys, I'm going to lean Garrett Armfield for the pick. Sari City's coming off of his back-to-back Contender Series fights against Ramon Tavares. The first one was an early stoppage in what many people saw. So they gave Ramon Tavares a rematch, and he was able to beat the split decision win over Sari City. Granted, Tavares did miss weight that time by 4 pounds, and I do think that that is something worth noting, as a weight miss does give you a pretty big advantage, especially when you're going to try to lean on your wrestling, because you've already fought the guy before, and Tavares knew that City's path to victory was his distance management and his powerful striking. He has 7 KOs in his 12 fights, and I think that is something worth noting. Now, that being said, unfortunately for him, he's matched up against Garrett Armfield, who we really have seen some very good striking out of. And not just that, but I have been impressed with his pace that he puts on fighters early on. And I just think that that's going to be hard for Sari Sidi to get that distance and find that distance against a dog like Garrett Armfield, who's really going to bring that fight to him. He's going to do a lot of dirty boxing, get in the clinch. And I know that we've seen Garrett Armfield gas out at the end of fights, as he did get subbed by Onama in his debut in the UFC, and then the last fight that we saw in Fight Night Vegas 97, where he got submitted by Brady Heastand. Both of those not the best looks, but if I like to believe something, it's that Garrett Armfield is working on that cardio, and at 28 years old, that pace that he brings, 5'6", he's a shorter fighter, but he really is good at closing that distance that Sadi is going to try to maintain. And for that reason, I'm going to pick Garrett Armfield. I could see it being by KO or stoppage, but I would like to lean decision in this fight. That being said, either way, I think Garrett Armfield can win it, so give me him for the pick. On to the next fight of the night, we have a heavyweight matchup between Alexander Romanov and Rodrigo Nascimento. For this one, guys, we have a matchup between the grappling heavyweights, and I do tend to lean Alexander Romanov in this pick. I think that this is going to be a pretty close fight, and it may be one that goes to decision, as Nascimento's kind of known for being the heavyweight that takes fights to decision. I'm picking Alexander Romanov in this, and I think that he could win the decision as well, but I do just see for him in this heavyweight bout having the higher finishing potential. While the grappling margin may not be huge, I do think that Alexander Romanov has a significant striking advantage in this match, and as heavyweights, I do think that that's going to be a big difference, as Nascimento is coming off of that big KO loss to Derek Lewis in the 3rd round, where he was getting some of his grappling off early, but with Derek Lewis, you can never count him out, and I think that Alexander Romanov is the same. The only person to submit Alexander Romanov was Hayatan Almeida, and that was in their last bout. I do not think that Nascimento has anywhere near the ground game that Hayatan Almeida does. Now, that being said, we haven't seen too many ground specialists at heavyweight, so it's hard to know how Alexander Romanov is going to match up even against the lower level grapplers at the heavyweight division, which I'm not saying Nascimento is, but he's somewhere in the middle tier there. That being said, I don't think that Nascimento is going to be able to find the submission on this one. I think that it will probably lead to a decision, or Romanov will probably find him on the chin sometime in this fight. I do think that he's going to wobble him, and we'll see at that point if Romanov still has what it takes to get these finishes at 33 years old. Either way, that's going to be my pick for this one, guys. Give me Alexander Romanov. Up next, we have a matchup in the featherweight division between Jack Shore and Yusuf Zalal. The pick for this one, guys, is Yusuf Zalal. In his 20 pro MMA fights, he's never been finished. And while Jack Shore has never lost a decision, he has been finished twice. And for me, I could see Yusuf Zalal getting it done either way from this one. The submissions over Billy Quarantino and Jarno Aarons were just really impressive to me, guys. Guys that don't get finished. He's going out there and just completely ragdolling. He's at Factory Muay Thai now. When he switched to that gym, it's like something switched on inside of him, guys. And we're watching a whole new fighter, and I think that he should be taken that serious. You can look at his record and see that the 15-5 really doesn't look as good on paper as the 17-2 Jack Shore, but yet the betting odds nearly have Yusuf Zalal as a 3-1 favorite. And while I would normally be looking to fade the 3-1 favorite against a guy like Jack Shore, who's 17-2 and also has very good grappling, I just think Yusuf Zalal is very complete. The change to Factory Muay Thai will be something that fans look back at and see as the turning point in Yusuf Zalal's career, as I think that he is just too well rounded and too well coached to lose a fight like Jack Shore, who is a very reserved and patient guy. I think Yusuf Zalal is going to put that pressure on him and make Jack Shore's life hell this Saturday night. Guys, the pick for this one is very confident, and it is Yusuf Zalal. Up next, we have another Canadian fighter, Charles Jourdain, taking on Victor Henry. And for this one, guys, I am leaning Charles Jourdain as he's moving down to bantamweight. I think is going to be a really good move for him. I think that he'll be able to use his size in the wrestling department to his advantage. And even though Victor Henry does have really good offensive and defensive grappling, we've never seen him finish before in his 30 professional MMA fights. And although I don't think Charles Jourdain will be the first finish, I do think that he's going to be able to do enough when the fight's at distance with his striking. Even though Jourdain is the shorter fighter, he does have that 1 inch in reach advantage. I think that he's just going to be the physically bigger guy. And for that, I think that Jourdain's going to give Victor Henry some problems. I do think Victor Henry's going to spend a little bit of the fight on his back. And that being said, the judges in Canada give me Charles Jourdain for this pick. And while I wouldn't be surprised if Victor Henry does get it done, I'm going to go ahead and go Air Jourdain to redeem his 2-fight losing streak and come back with a strong performance at home. Moving along, we have a matchup between Ariane De Silva and Jasmine Jasudavicius. And for this one, guys, I am going to go Jasmine Jasudavicius. I think that they gave her a very winnable matchup here against Ariane De Silva, as Jasmine Jasudavicius just has that absolute dog in her at 125 pounds. We have just not seen people that can take shots like her. And while I'm not really one to normally just brag on someone's chin at first, her cardio, gas tank, and pace is going to be a problem for Ariane De Silva, who does already have 4 knockout losses of her 9 total. She just does not show that she has that chin and dog in her that Jasmine Jasudavicius has. She folds when she gets hit, and I think that Jasmine Jasudavicius is really going to be able to just get her wrestling pressure off and stifle the game of Ariane De Silva, who normally likes to get top position on the ground. I think it's where Jasmine Jasudavicius is going to be for the majority of the fight. I wouldn't be surprised if it's by KO. Look at the prop. It might be a good sprinkle on there when those odds get released. But I do think that 235, there is still some value in Jasmine Jasudavicius, who I think is one of my locks of the night this fight. So go ahead and give me that as my pick. Jasmine Jasudavicius is one of the more confident ones. Next, we have the featured fight of the prelims between Ayman Zahabi and Pedro Munoz. And while both of these guys are getting older in age, it's tough to really write off either one of their cardios, as both of them have a tremendous chin, can take a lot of shots, and both have really good cardio all the way through the fight. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup. I do tend to lean towards Ayman Zahabi, as I think his win over Basharat was actually a very big win for him, and I do think that that shows that at 36 years old, he still has a little more in the gas tank. As Pedro Munoz, I do give him a little bit of a striking advantage. I think Zahabi will have the little bit of the pace advantage, and he's going to know how to get the fight where he wants it. With the 11-2 record, I have been impressed in his last few performances. He does have a little bit of reach and height, so in a fight where I'm a little bit torn, I'm going to lean towards those factors to get me through. So go ahead and give me Ayman Zahabi as the winner for the featured prelims, and also the home crowd favorite leaning in his favor. Starting off the main card, we have a bout between Mike Mallet and Trevin Giles at the welterweight division. And guys, I'm going to go with the dog on this one and Trevin Giles. I just think that Giles has only lost to the top of the division. If you look back at his last 4 losses, he's losing to Carlos Prates, who I rate very high, and I think that he may be one of the best welterweight strikers in the division. He got submitted by Gabriel Bonfim, and then he lost to Mikel Morales and Dricus du Plessis. He has a win over Roman Dolidze. I mean, this guy is only losing to top-tier competition. He also beat Ryan Spann early in his UFC career. I mean, I think that this guy is severely overlooked right in this spot. At a plus 215 dog, I am convinced that that is a ton of value for a guy like Mike Malott, who got KO'd by Neil Magny. You guys have the Canadians' top prospect in Canada versus Neil Magny, and he was still able to look good the whole fight and eventually find a round 3 KO when Mike Malott just could not hang anymore. Neil Magny has been getting starched by just about everyone else in the division, and I think at this stage, Trevin Giles is fighting people that are better than Neil Magny. And honestly, he has his moments in every fight that he has. So, guys, go ahead and give me Trevin Giles as a plus 215 underdog. Even though Mike Malott should get this fight done at home in Canada, I think they're trying to give him the layup to get a knockout and a very big performance to rebound after the Neil Magny loss. I just don't think the UFC is doing him any favors by giving him these guys with tons of competition and tons of experience. So give me Trevin Giles to find a way to win it, make it a tough, gritty fight, and again, another decision here in Edmonton. The second fight of the night, we have a matchup between Marc-Andre Barriault and Dustin Stoltzfus at the middleweight division. Both of these guys coming off of quick turnaround KOs in June, 4 months removed. You know, you never really like to see fighters take that kind of, turnaround. But I guess both of them are coming off of a pretty equal timeline in terms of it. Marc-Andre Barriault, June 29th at the end, and Dustin Stoltzfus more towards the first week of June. That being said, I do think that Barriault here is the bigger threat with power, and Stoltzfus' chin has looked a little more suspect, being knocked out 2 out of his last 3 fights. We've also just seen him continuously finished in the first round, and although that's not necessarily Andre Barriault's, forte, he tends to step back and pick his openings and counter you until you get knocked out. With his 10 KOs on his 24 fight record is pretty impressive. I do think that he's going to be able to find the chin of Stoltzfus here, so I'm leaning Marc-Andre Barriault for the pick, and go ahead and sprinkle KO if you're following along with the props that I'm placing. I do see that this is going to be one of the few opportunities for a finish on this card, so let's go ahead and pick Marc-Andre Barriault. Up next, we have a matchup between Caio Machado and Brenson Ribeiro. And for this one, guys, it's not a very exciting matchup for me. I do think Brenson Ribeiro moving up to heavyweight is going to be an interesting take on this fight and an interesting angle to see how it plays out. I do think that he's going to have the speed advantage here. And while neither one of these guys has really left anything to be desired in their short UFC careers, I do think that Brenson Ribeiro in his last performance against Gadzhigulov looked pretty sharp. And I do think that it was a big thing that he was able to squeak out a majority decision. As well, both of these guys are on 2-fight losing streaks and are 1-2 in their UFC career. I'm going to go ahead and lean the dog in Brenson Ribeiro, as I think that he's just going to be a little bit quicker on his entrances against Caio Machado, who will likely have the power advantage here. The question is, will he be able to hit Ribeiro, who also may have the grappling advantage in this fight too, as he's normally a light heavyweight, and generally they're the more well-rounded fighters, as heavyweights are pretty much just power punchers for the most part. Now, we have seen Caio Machado go to 3 decisions in his last 3 fights, so it's not necessarily the case with him, but I do see Brenson Ribeiro having a slight advantage in the speed realm, and for me, I'm going to go ahead and pick him, as I don't think that he's got weak hands either. While I do think Machado has the power advantage, I think Ribeiro's shots are still going to be ripping, and I'm very interested to see him at heavyweight, as this may be a new home for him here in Edmonton. But go ahead and give me Brenson Ribeiro by decision. On to the next fight, which is the featured fight of the night between two heavyweights, Derek Lewis and Jonathan Deniz. And guys, the pick on this one is my balls are hot, Derek Lewis. I just don't see Jonathan Deniz being able to out volume Derek Lewis. Well, I take that back. I do see him being able to out volume Derek Lewis, but the amount of volume that he puts on, I think that Derek Lewis is going to be able to eat and survive. Jonathan Deniz did not look great against Chaos Williams throughout the second, and I know that's a completely different style of fight as he was worried about the takedowns that Chaos Williams was going to throw his way, which never actually ended up manifesting. But Jonathan Deniz just looks like he's a little bit of a gas tank problem, and I think Derek Lewis has made a great career at not just finding KOs in the heavyweight division, but finding KOs late into the fights as his punches just never seem to lose power. So that being said, I think Jonathan Deniz is live in this spot, but I'm going to go ahead and go Derek Lewis as the dog. Even at 39 years old, I just think that his chin is still held intact pretty well for the heavyweight division. To only be knocked out 3 times in 40 fights is actually pretty fucking impressive. So go ahead, give me Derek Lewis for the pick. Give me Derek Lewis by KO for a sprinkle. Up next, we have a matchup between Aaron Blanchfield and Rose Namajunas in our co-main event. And guys, this one is going to be a very interesting matchup as it does have potential title implications tied to it. For this fight, I am leaning Rose Namajunas, and I will go with her as my pick, as Thug Nasty has just continued to get better, and at 32 years old, she may finally be on the streak and run that she needs to be on to get the title back. I just think that Aaron Blanchfield struggles against these kinds of matchups, which we've seen in the Manoir Ferreau in her last fight out. It's just those strikers with good takedown defense. And not only that, but Aaron Blanchfield is small for this division. At 125, Rose Namajunas is the bigger fighter, and I think that she's going to be able to survive the physicality of Aaron Blanchfield, who likes to take the fights to the ground and use her insane top grappling game to get submissions and to hold positions that just fighters are not able to get out of. So, that being said, Aaron Blanchfield does have a very bright future in this division, and I think that as she gets into her later 20s, she may be able to start winning these matchups. However, I don't think that she's going to be able to make enough of improvement from her last time out against Ferreau to beat Rose Namajunas on the feet, and I just don't see her being able to bully and dominate the fight like Aaron Blanchfield does when she's successful. So go ahead and give me Rose Namajunas for the pick in another decision. The main event of the evening, we have Brandon Moreno and Amir Albazi, and this is going to be a very exciting matchup. This could be another potential finish. I could also see this one going to decision, but for me, it's about a 50-50 coin flip. I could really see this going either way. Amir Albazi has just shown really great grappling and wrestling pressure, and for the flyweight division, that is something that's extremely important, as a lot of these guys don't have KO power. So if you can survive the ground and dominate on the ground, you're going to be a very tough competitor at flyweight, which Amir Albazi has been in his 17-1 record. Now, that being said, I don't think any true UFC fan thinks he won his last fight out against Kai Kara France. It was a split decision, but I think it should have been unanimous the other way. Kai Kara France definitely was able to survive a lot of the grappling pressure from Amir Albazi and put some damage to him on the feet. Now, that being said, I don't think Brandon Moreno is as good of a striker or as technical and quick of a striker as a Kai Kara France, but I do think that he is a better wrestler. And I think that wrestling is going to be able to allow him to survive some of those takedown attempts from Amir Albazi and also just continue to keep going. I think that the gas tank from Brandon Moreno is way more proven, and he's off of 2 split decision losses to the champ and the number 1 contender in the division right now. So that being said, give me Brandon Moreno. I really like this pick. I think he's a good spot for him to get a dub here and to get right back into the mix and title contention where he deserves to be, as Brandon Moreno has just put on some of the most exciting fights of anyone in this division of all time. So go ahead and give me Brandon Moreno as the pick here. It may be a little bit of a bet with the heart, but I promise it's mostly IQ. I've been putting in the research and the tape study, guys, for you to be able to go into these fights confident, these betting cards confident, and that's honestly what keeps me fired up and going. So hit the like button, hit subscribe. If you're not a part of the community already, join, and I promise you, you won't regret it. But until Friday, guys, I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you then.